set. Welcome to the Monday, May the 7th meeting of the Montpelier Design Review Committee. I will let committee members and staff introduce themselves around the table.
Hannah Smith.
Mike Miller, staff.
Stephen Everett.
Meredith Crandall, staff.
Seth Mitchell.
Benjamin Cheney.
Unless anybody else has anything to offer for comments beforehand, we'll go to approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? All in favor of the agenda, raise your hand. And we'll go straight to the first application for 112 Main Street. Applicant Lee Youngman. Hi Lee, come on up and have a seat. Tell us about your application.
So I want to put a darling little sign above my big bright purple awning. I thought the purple awning would be enough to tell people where we are, but clearly it's not. I haven't had a sign for several years, and the sign is exactly the same color as the awning and it mimics the logo that I have in my window. Just one of those blade signs that comes out from the building.
I'm not sure if anybody has any comments, questions, suggestions. I would just have a comment in terms of mounting the steel bracket. Because there's clapboards on the building that's in a regular shape,
Yeah.
you may want to get a pattern cut that fits the clapboards.
Okay. Okay, I'm
And-
gonna have
and mount that-
Wood do the installation,
And
so.
mount that
yeah.
between the bracket and the clapboards so that you get a flush mount against the clapboards without sort of, you mount the steel directly to the clapboards because of the way the clapboards are shaped, it'll indent
Gotcha.
the clapboards themselves.
All
So
right.
that's always a good way to mount them.
Okay. I will pass it on to Wood and Wood, who will do the installation.
They know what they're doing.
They do
Any
know what
other-
they're doing.
I was just counting thought those and thinking that it must be like 6 inches per person, like 6¼ inches tall, plus gusset on the bracket. I think it's gonna fill up right to the underside. Less than exposure on the back, that's probably 6 inches.
I didn't copy that for me. I don't actually,
So the
Yeah.
actual height.
yeah.
And what are the dimensions?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Were you
Yeah.
intending to place it centered above your window or centered below
I
the
was,
window
I
above it?
thought that centered above the awning would be kind of the most visually appealing. Either centered above the awning or centered under the window above the awning, I think it's just gonna look better than centered above the window under the awning. Because,
The
Maybe
nail
exhaust the
nail
side.
salon is not obviously centered under the window either.
right, right,
But the only question he has is that those clapboards are 6 inches, count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 30 inches.
Yeah.
And your sign is 31½. So
yeah,
That's just a cast iron exposure.
from the top of the,
Right.
and that's not even to the top of the bracket.
right. Yeah,
Would actually come in pieces of measure.
they worked from that same photo. So I imagine that they can shrink it down. I mean, it's just, I
You
don't
may
know
have
why
to
they couldn't, yeah.
Shrink your yarn ball.
Yeah, that's okay, we can do that. We can do that. Would I need to come back if they determine,
What we
that
could
we
s-
need to
what we
shrink
could-
it down?
What we could say is that the top of the bracket
mhm,
shall not be higher than 1 full course below the window. If
okay,
that's about where it's showing right now.
Yeah, and that's gonna really scale your sign down quite a bit.
Yeah.
But if you make the bracket
Yeah.
any higher than that, would you wanna limit it to under the windowsill?
No, I like your idea, it's just a matter of, it's really gonna scale it down.
Well, and what if you totally just push the sign all the way over to the, to the left? So it goes out, didn't crowd the window at all.
Hmm.
So in this picture, plumb above the main.
Yeah,
Is this your door
that's our
here?
door, yeah, yeah. Boy, I could do that. I
Which
could
would
do
you
that.
prefer? Would you rather have it centered over the awning, or would you rather have it centered in the space to the left? And then you still couldn't go up really much higher than the,
Well, if it was all the
course
way
below.
above the Main Street sign, if we moved it to over here instead, then it probably wouldn't matter if it was flush with the windowsill or a little bit higher than the windowsill.
I would still try to keep the top of the bracket at this line at
At
the
that
bottom of
line,
the
okay.
windowsill, just for continuity and
All right.
rhythm of the signs. This one is centered right
Right,
here.
right,
There are two things that you could do to make the size fit in.
Mhm.
Number one, again, you could shrink the yarn ball a
yarn ball,
little.
yeah.
And number two, you could move the sign closer to the bracket
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah,
Because that's 3 inches right there.
right.
And that yarn ball is a good 16, 18 inches tall.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think I'd rather have it under the window than to the side of it. I mean, really what I want is people driving by to see it. That's all I care about, but I would also like it to look like it had been thoughtfully placed.
And that's closer to your entry door as well.
Sure.
Once you're here
Yep.
on the side,
Right,
I'm not sure that people would be confused that it's down the alley, but
Right.
this clearly states that it's
right there.
right
Yeah.
over the center of your shop.
Okay. All right, well, luckily, it's a pretty simple sign. So if they need to shrink it down to get it to fit in the space, I don't have a problem with that. As long as,
This is also like that,
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, Audra's reviewed this.
and they did have the city specs, so, when they did this design. Unless they've changed since last year, because they actually did the design last year, but then we weren't sure that our lease was gonna get
Certainly
renewed.
looks no
Yeah.
larger than the mail salon sign next door in terms of square
Yeah.
footage.
Can't imagine going downtown though. That sign should be finished.
You'd rather have it delayed.
Yeah, because of the way the logo is, if I had a more horizontal, logo, I think it would be okay, but just because it's so compact, it really just looked like the best way to do a sign.
Okay,
Okay?
so what we'll do is just make an adjustment to
Yeah.
the application.
All
Be
right.
that the custom steel bracket
Can't be higher than 1 full board below the window, is that what you said? So it flush with this,
So it's basically showing slightly higher
Yeah.
than your
Yeah, okay.
pearl there.
okay,
So it'll come up to the top of the bottom of the first clapboard below the windowsill.
yes, okay, okay. I can live with that, great. That's it for me, thank you for making that easy.
We're not quite done.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just making a note
No,
here
it's great.
quickly, and I'm gonna go through, just quickly go through a set of criteria that
Okay.
apply for the
All right.
center.
I just get nervous. It's silly, right?
So again, the only adjustment was a custom steel bracket will be mounted no higher than the bottom of the first clapboard below the windowsill, above the sign, and centered over the awning below, which is exactly where your
Right,
picture
where I
is
have
showing
it.
it to be located.
And so if that means I need to shrink the sign, that's okay with you guys, I don't need to come back for that, right? Just so that I'm clear, okay, good, thank you.
You can, again, just make it, size it so that it fits into that space.
Sure, will do, okay?
Okay.
Very good.
Well, the sign itself is nicely designed.
Yes.
The criteria that apply: preservation and reconstruction of the appropriate historic style of the proposed projects in the historic district or involves an historic structure, acceptable. Harmony of exterior design with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping not proposed in this application. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities, no lighting proposed for the sign, so not applicable. Recognition of and respect for view corridors and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and state house, acceptable. Conformance with cityscape placement and design recommendations, acceptable. Compatibility with subject property and adjacent properties, acceptable. Shall not obscure significant architectural details, acceptable. Consistency and uniformity of multiple signs, not applicable here. Illumination, not applicable. Pennants and banners are prohibited, not applicable here in this application. Individual letters affixed, painted, or engraved directly on the building or structure are encouraged. The sign at this location is acceptable. All in favor of the application, raise your right hand. And then would you just sign this in the space above my name right in the middle of that?
We just typically have a motioner and a second on those, or do you just go?
You just do it all in favor.
Okay.
Just a straight vote.
I was just trying to
Thank you.
make notes for minutes, so.
We've never made a motion on the vote, just
Okay.
all in favor or opposed.
All right.
You did this, and
Thank you.
again, since we're advisory, Lee, since we're advisory, you would come to the next development review board meeting, which is,
No, these are actually
Is
now
this- you
going
don't have
to
to?
administrative, yes.
okay,
we're
so
not-
you don't need
So I just need to do this thing and I need to wait 30 days?
Audra will be in touch.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, good. Streamlining the
Yes,
process.
it's one of the few things that worked as planned.
Good. The next application is for 110 Northfield Street, lot 49 properties. Come up and tell us about your application.
So I'm Britt Richardson. Nice to see you all tonight. This apartment has 3 entrances. I'm proposing to do some renovating on the interior, which would, by eliminating one of the entrances and replacing it with a window, I would be facilitating the renovation interior, as well as closing up one of those windows to make a laundry area. So the other change that I'd like to make is changing the rear door on the south side to a sliding glass door instead of the door that exists there now.
So on the north side, are all 3 original?
Not, I don't think any of these doors are original. This is an addition that was probably put on in the 40s, is my guess, from the cabinetry that's been in the house. And the door is, the door that I'd like to eliminate is made of fiberglass, so it's clearly not original.
So why was there that door? There are 2 going into one apartment.
2 on the north side. I don't have any idea. We inherited this when we purchased the property about 10 years ago.
And the window itself, is that, it's a marble clad?
Yes.
Are they true divided or are they simulated?
I would like to use simulated divided lights, just for efficiency.
They actually work pretty well until you get right up to the window. You can't even tell it from anywhere about 20 feet back. It's almost impossible.
And this building is not visible from the street.
Yeah, this is
At all.
Well, it was the street side of this, but there, I realize it's,
You can't even, most people don't even know the house exists. Precisely. So standing on the sidewalk, you can't see the house. You'd be about 100 feet from that window if you were standing on the street.
The siding is gonna match the siding that's there, the
Ex-
trim that's going around it.
Precisely. Yep, exact matches the cedar siding that's been painted blue.
Never divided lights or match them.
Well, if you look at, let's see, if you look at the north side exterior, there are double hung windows above on the second floor, but this would end up being a smaller window, so my hope would be to make it look like the small window on the second floor in that exterior picture. So this one has 9 divided lights, and either a casement or an awning window that looks like that. Just to keep it semi-congruous. I mean, if you look at the rest of the building, none of the windows look like this part of the building. They're all 2 over 2 instead of 6 over 6. So it's sort of hard for me to choose which style do I match, so I'm trying to match the style of the addition.
So what will that space be used for?
It's a kitchen. It's currently a kitchen, and it will continue to be a kitchen.
Just give you a space to put a washer dryer behind it without being blocking the window.
The washer dryer would be on the south side. Right here is where I'd like to put the stove.
Oh, okay.
So it wouldn't make sense to have the door
Okay.
there anymore.
Then I notice on the front it says replace door and window with a sliding glass door.
Yeah, on the south side, there is a door there and a window next to it. And I would like to put a slider in there.
To replace this door.
To replace that door and the 2 over 2 window there.
Oh, okay, so you'll take this window out and put a slider in here?
I'd like to take the window out on the right. That's where
Mm-hmm.
Steve's looking at the very last page. So that window on the right-hand side would no longer be there at all.
Right.
And on the left-hand side, the window and the door,
Okay, the slider will go right in here.
those 2 would be replaced by a slider.
Okay.
and we would keep that roof overhang, would all fit within this roof overhang?
Well, I could put the door here under the roof overhang, or take the roof overhang off and put the door where the door and the window are.
Do you want to move the overhang over so it covers the entire?
Probably would not do that.
Sounds like you really,
I'm not attached to it.
is that part of this application or?
It could be, if,
What is the roof line up here? It's hard to tell, it's dark. Is that a flat roof or is it pitched the other way or is it?
it's not a flat roof, it's pitched on both sides, toward north and south
Coming
sides.
this way.
Yep, pitched north and south.
So everything's running off the roof and dropping down on the little patio at that door.
Yeah, there's no patio, that's just, like a cement, I don't know the name for that.
Just a
piece.
walkway into the,
It's not even a walkway, there's like a little piece of cement that
Okay.
takes the rain away from the house. And
So you're not gonna get dripped on coming in and out of that door?
it's not it's not used as an entrance. All of the parking is on the north side.
Okay.
It's really just to access the yard. And that's
Okay.
the only thing that is on the other side there, just the yard.
This photograph, I mean, it's pretty hard to see what's going on here, and I assume this is that spot right there.
That's correct.
And there's a tree in front of it that
There's a
sort of looks
shrub.
like a staircase in this.
There's a shrub and the emergency exit staircase.
Okay, and so,
So the window that I'm proposing eliminating on the south side of the house is actually not visible.
it's up above what, a
It's
propane tank or something?
Yeah, it's behind the shrub and the stairs.
But you would have to do, if you were to keep this overhang, would the door fit in there with these knee braces, or would you have to post it, or would you have?
The slider could fit here, or I could eliminate this and the slider could fit here.
I see.
This faces south?
That's south facing, yes.
Would you wanna put a couple of posts out here, bring this widen this, bring it out a little further, and have a nice little covered patio out here? No?
That's not in budget, I'm
Okay.
afraid.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful idea, but I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to pay for that.
Okay.
Yeah, just realistically.
The fire escape isn't actually using the roof as bearing.
The fire escape is not using the
It's really
roof
hard to
as
tell, I
a-
don't think.
Like it's not, there's
Looks
no
like-
structural
No, this,
connection.
using this little, no, it is not, no,
So if you got rid of the roof, would be no issue with that.
no, it is not bearing, weight on that.
Where's the access? Are these stairs going up from this direction here? Are these stairs, or what is that little thing in the corner of that photo?
Yeah, I think that's the stairs.
I think,
Yeah,
I think it's just, they are right next to each other, they're adjacent, but one is not bearing on the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the access to those stairs are from somehow from the other side?
No, there's, if you, can I borrow this for a second, please?
It's hard to tell, it looks like there's,
So they come down, they descend,
to
they descend right here, the foot of the steps is right there.
right, they come at an angle,
They turn.
going from right to left as you're looking at it.
That's correct, yeah, so they come down from this, roofline window,
Okay?
and then they turn on a platform there and come down to the
Okay.
front. So I'm sorry.
You know, if it were me, I'd want to keep the roof just for sake of protection. That's, I know it's not a main entrance, but it's seems like you want to keep it, it's already there, it's
Right.
provided some cover.
That's fine, I mean, I'm flexible as to where the sliding glass door goes, it doesn't, if you all think that it's better with the roof, then
Well, what we could
that's
do
fine
would,
with me.
what we could do would be to, since I think the regulation allows you to complete anything within 2 years, we would give you the option to recreate this overhang with that same profile over the slider within 2 years after approval. So you
Okay.
don't have to do it now if the budget doesn't allow, but if you decide in 6 months that that might be a really good idea, you could throw some stone in there and make a little overhang, couple of posts and an overhang. You could probably do that for under $1,000 easily.
Okay.
If you decided to make that a nice amenity to the unit so that even on a rainy day, somebody could go out the door and sit.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Any comments, questions, suggestions about possibility of doing that?
whichever seems to make more sense, or I don't know if it matters to the committee. Whether it's a casement or not, it's gonna look the same from the exterior. I think the casement would let more air into the kitchen.
It's above the stove, so.
Yeah, the stove is gonna be there. And it is a covered porch, so, the casement window would work pretty well, and there's no traffic, people aren't walking by there,
It's just a
so.
stove.
You wouldn't be reaching this way over the stove, you'd be at the stove reaching to the side,
Oh,
so.
it's on the side of the stove.
Mhm.
Casement.
That's what I would like, yeah.
And again, this is an optional change at your discretion. I just said on the south side of the dwelling, at the location of proposed replacement of the existing door and window with a sliding door, the existing overhang may be removed and/or a replacement overhang with matching profile may be installed to cover the area outside the proposed sliding door.
Sounds great.
And again, you don't have to do that now. You can do that later this year, next year. Other comments, questions, suggestions to be added? Okay, the evaluation criteria again for this, preservation or reconstruction of the appropriate historic style is the proposed projects in the historic district or involves any historic structure. The modifications are acceptable. Harmony of exterior design with other properties in the district acceptable. Compatibility of proposed materials with other properties in the district acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping not proposed in this application. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities. Is there any lighting next to the doorway? Looks like there's a light coming down from the overhang, possibly. Is that a light?
I think that is a light there.
Okay, so if you take the overhang away, there's no more light. Would you want to replace that with a side light on the wall, or what's your thought on that?
My first thought would be, I'm gonna try to just maintain the overhang and fit the door underneath it.
Okay.
And if that doesn't work, a side light would be fine, if that's preferred.
You referred to it, should have the alternative.
Yes, and again, this will be an optional change. optional change if the existing overhang is removed, the light fixture underneath may be replaced with a side light next to the sliding door. And last, recognition of and respect for good view quarters and significant vistas, including gateway views of the State House. I would say not applicable since you can't even see it from the street. All in favor of the application with the optional changes, raise your hand. Again, if you just sign this one above my name on the lower left. And again, administratively,
Yep, these are, almost all of these are gonna be administrative tonight.
okay, just check, all this stuff and make sure.
The hotel will be going on to the DRB.
That's not an almost. Okay, thank you.
very
Good luck
much.
with your
Appreciate
project.
input.
The next application for 13 Terrace Street, Jeannie Ellis and David. Hello, Dan.
How are you all?
Hello again.
Hello again.
Hi, Dan.
It's nice to see the regulars coming back.
We're good. Sorry. Now you'll be ready for.
Now we're gonna have plenty.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead and describe your application.
So we would like, there's an existing, actually, there's some language, at least that was used in the agenda that isn't quite accurate. It says in regards to a front porch, but actually it's the rear porch. There's an existing rear porch that we'd like to enclose. We'll be doing some kind of foundational work and some structural work to make that viable. But there's an existing roof line there that we'd simply like to enclose and bring into the envelope of the building to be incorporated into a new mudroom.
This is what you're talking about. That's it.
Correct. Yes.
And I'm sorry, just because I don't know you, just for the record, could you state your names?
Oh, yeah, sure. My name is David Pelletier.
Dave is the homeowner along with his wife Jeannie, and my name is Dan Claire, and I will be the contractor.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Sorry, he's been here so many times, we all know him by now.
Materials to match the.
Oh, absolutely. The clapboards, there's a little vertical wainscot detail down at the bottom. We'll just continue that right through.
Wood decal.
Yep. Of course, spruce, with that crisp 90-degree edge on the clapboard.
So better than
Yep, absolutely.
Can you talk about the window itself, the replacement window?
So, so it would be a new construction window, and it would be Marvin Integrity. That is actually the kitchen. Oh, so there's a couple different windows. Those would be in the kitchen, facing. There's a casement window presently on the rear gable of the existing kitchen.
Right here on the right.
Nope, actually on the left side there, Steve. Yes,
Okay.
there.
Right there.
Yep.
Okay.
Those would be the new casements, and then the new double hung, which I think is would be the kind of the hand sketch, there, and that would be sized vertically to match the original windows of the house.
Okay.
And which is typically something like 60 inches tall, and widthwise would be 30 inches. Yeah, vertically that dimension would be the same. I'm not proposing to put a side by side. That would just be a window.
single.
There, a single.
So it's not going to be ganged like this.
Correct.
So is the size going to be
window there. That's like, that's, kind of that 32 by 60 window that we always see in the old houses. So it would be something to that effect, like that 32 by 60.
So this is not a scale drawing?
That is, it is not a perfectly scaled drawing.
No,
Correct.
I mean, this
It looks
really big.
wide, doesn't it? Thank you
Yes.
for pointing that out, yeah. It would be that, the height would follow right through, so the water table above the vertical, wainscot detail carries right through, and we'd carry the head casing right through, and I actually haven't done that field measure yet, but it's gonna be something to the tune of that 60 inches.
And the intention is that the window, the replacement window takes the place of the existing location, right? And then,
That's correct, yes, sir. That's correct, yes.
just out of curiosity, had you thought about keeping this trim within this field?
Thought about it, but given that that's not an original detail, because that whole thing was once a covered porch, and somebody some time ago started the process of incorporating the covered porch into the inside of the building, so it made sense to me to not maintain that necessarily.
And you're not putting a window there because when you open the door at 90,
Correct, yeah, it's just,
And you said, is this window being replaced here as well?
That window actually is being replaced, and I'm realizing that I should have been explicit, so I'm gonna take this opportunity to be explicit about it, and I forgot to be in this application. We'd like to move those windows out, I'm realizing that I should have included that in this application, and I forgot to be explicit about it, so hopefully I can take this opportunity to be explicit about it. We'd like to move those windows. So this is that existing double casement that you just circled right there, Steve?
Yes.
Is in the middle of this wall right here.
Mhm.
And we'd actually like to spread them out. Or
And would they remain casements?
they would remain casements, which is the windows that you were just pointing out there.
Same height and width?
Correct. Plus or minus a tiny bit.
Okay. I'm assuming these are just old wood frame casements.
They're like from the 80s or something like that. Yeah. So, that existing casement is approximately in the middle of that
Mhm.
cabinet run there, and we'd like to, move those windows out like that. Does that make sense?
And what would the sill height be? Much lower?
The sill height's gonna be basically the same as what's there. That existing window is just above an existing countertop.
Oh,
And we're
okay.
proposing to put these existing windows
Just
again,
on either side,
just-
so it'd be roughly the same size, but just spread out
Exactly, correct.
pretty close to the same
Yeah.
dimension.
Yes, yeah. As far as height goes, yes. Yeah.
Use the wood frame integrities, or?
We would use, no, we've got those in there as, you mean on the exterior?
Or the exterior, it's the
integrities, yeah,
integrity,
yeah.
it's a wood frame integrity.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And I'm assuming this window, which will now be on the inside, will be gone, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And you said originally this was a covered porch, or not?
Originally, there's an existing, kind of where that single small window is,
Mhm.
that we're proposing to replace with the double hung. That area there, in between kind of the corner boards, those flat stock corner boards, that was all at one point a covered porch.
Okay.
And I don't know when they did it, but some decades ago, they partitioned that off and brought that into the envelope. not, no, that was, I was intending to show you the kind of the half-light, two panel below, but no, the glass would be clear glass.
So that gable end, that the casements, I'm just want to clarify this on the application, like, just to reinforce what you said.
Thank you, yeah.
That basically is the south side? Is that south? It's facing up,
No,
there's
the
Bailey.
The gable end with the window issue that you were discussing is north. Terrace Street is actually the southwest side of the house. I'm not sure if it helps at all, but this is not Terrace Street up towards Middlesex, this is Terrace Street back towards Capitol.
Yes, it's right near the corner of
Yeah,
Bailey.
yeah, yeah.
And actually, Bailey runs north, because as you come down Bailey, you're looking up the hill towards National Life, which is to the south.
Right.
So this would actually be the south side, because this Bailey is running south this way.
No,
So
that's
No,
just
Bailey's
not-
running north that way.
Turned around
Running-
180 degrees.
Bailey's written going uphill there.
Okay, you're going uphill here,
No.
going the other way, okay.
We'll drive up and then swing to the left to go up Terrace.
Okay.
This is the side of Terrace that's
Okay, this is towards the Capitol. this
towards
way then.
Capitol, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that's on the north side. So I'm just gonna make a note here.
Clearly not part of this application, but do you have entertaining any idea of building some sort of covered porch entrance that may come off of here? It would be nice to save the things and, you know, this fretwork or, yeah, whatever you wanna call it, in when and if that is an idea. It would be nice to save that so that it can be reused. It's not an idea, it's not an idea.
Not,
Just has nice symmetry.
yeah, the front of the house, the street side is that one, for sure.
Yeah. Seems like you might be able to get this view as you're walking up a little bit. It just seems like it could be rescued a bit. Used to deliver newspapers.
I just said for your clarification, the double casement window on the north side, ground floor, will be replaced by two single casement windows spaced apart to accommodate the kitchen interior on that side. Any other comments, questions, suggestions of any kind? Okay, I'll go through the criteria for this one as well. Preservation or reconstruction of the appropriate historic style of the proposed projects in the historic district or involves an historic structure, acceptable. Harmony of exterior design with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping, none proposed in this application. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities,
Is there any change in lighting for the outside?
I meant to also bring that up too. That we would like to put we'd like to put a carriage light just to the, next to the door right there.
Okay. Again, I just said a carriage light fixture may be mounted next to the proposed doorway into the enclosed living area. Recognition of and respect for view quarters and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and state house, acceptable. All in favor of the application, raise your right hand. And again, you can have that one signed right above my name on the lower left. You have a pen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next application, 100 Main Street. Carl Miller, applicant, Mary Alice.
So I'll just jump in really quick to go and give you guys a little bit of a heads up. The parklet is going to be a proposal that is going to City Council. So this is a DRC recommendation to City Council for the parklet because that appears in the street right away. This is not an application that gets a zoning permit or goes to DRB. This will be a recommendation for council.
Okay,
So you can give this to us and then we'll get it to council.
Yep, same recommendation, just different recipient.
Thank you so much for letting us come and speak with you. I'm Mary Alice Prophet, the applicant. This is my architect, Talia Stoneroff, and Rick Cannon of Cannon Construction. Nice to be here. We do have a few edits to make right away, just to be clear about the drawings. We were working on a tight time frame between the time that the new parklet ordinance was announced at the Montpelier Business Association meeting and today. So Talia has very kindly donated a lot of her time as an architect to get this work done, but she is a full-time professor and has a family, so we did have some edits that needed to be made that were really difficult to get to you in time for this meeting. So I just want to start, if it's okay with you, Mr. Everett, you can tell me whenever it's okay with you for me to add those.
you can share this one if you like.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Great.
Go ahead and
I'm working with a kind of awkward and large copy. Talia, do you have a smaller one I can glance at? Okay. All right. So the first edit, just to be very clear, and I just want to say that the intention of applying for this space is to create, with our very, very short window of good weather and good, outdoor seating weather here in downtown Montpelier, to create an additional space for the community that benefits the entire community in downtown Montpelier and draws people into Langdon Street, down Langdon Street, so that our neighbors on Langdon Street and our surrounding, business owners and those that work there can all sort of just have more folks on that corner. And I would say that the goal is to create a little bit more seating, and while we're open for business, this seating would be for people that are either buying takeout from the takeout window or are, eating at down home. However, per the new ordinance, the space is open to the community whenever we're not open for business. So anybody can come and sit, and right now a lot of people enjoy our outdoor seating who are not customers when we're not open. So that's that. We're excited about it. We were concerned about making sure that it's safe for those people that are sitting inside of the space and also vehicles that are turning the corner. And the first edit that I wanted to point out to you is that the trees, which what I'm talking to Gardener's Supply about are river birches, that they are actually in planters outside of the parklet space. In the plan here, it appears that they're inside the seating space. And the reason why I want to point that out to you is that the intention is that if a vehicle hits something, it would hit the tree in the planter first and not the people sitting in the parklet. I did speak with Carlo and Ben Draper from Positive Pie about this, and it hasn't been an issue with them. But that would be a separate standalone planter. And what we would like to ask is to place them close to where Bencini's trees were placed before, which is more in the triangular space, just because it gives a buffer of room between the planter and the beginning of the parklet structure. In case something were hit, there's a little bit of space for it to move. And I believe that you did have your structure hit one time. So it's just for safety purposes. And then the reason why we'd like to have one on each side of the parklet is to create some shade. And I think that's also around the issue of safety, just in terms of people that are elderly or dogs, having some space to be that's out of the sun. And another edit that I just wanted to mention to you in terms of the window application. This is a Marvin window, and what we're asking to do is to bring the double hung windows from the second story down and mimic that. And in the drawing, it appears to be a more modern, looking window, similar to like a fast food drive-through. That's not the case. What we're asking to do would be two windows, the same dimensions in terms of, it would be a smaller version of what you see on the second floor. But I just wanted to be clear about that. And then I also wanted to be clear that the rope is intended to make sure that anyone waiting in line stays off of the sidewalk, so that that sidewalk is completely clear and open for wheelchairs and traffic to flow. And that's very important. And the sweet peas are something green that's fun, that
Those are what are growing on top.
Right, this is a sweet pea that wouldn't be like a thick, wall of green. You could see through it. It's a little bit transparent. So I'll stop talking, and we're very excited and happy to answer any questions that you might have. And also, we would love suggestions from you in terms of your thoughts, and we can answer questions about the structure itself or the window, whatever you have.
Is there a window there now, or is it just these two?
There is. So
There is,
that
okay.
is an existing window.
Okay.
And it's just highlighted in that drawing to call attention that this is where it's really much more of a that window really doesn't fit the downtown as much. The ones that are coming
Yeah.
in are much more.
Right, so that window looks directly into the kitchen. So this is really exciting for us because people on the sidewalk are going to be able to look directly like a food truck in and see our line cooking. And also we have just purchased, thanks to my wonderful manager, Maggie, a really great creamy machine. So we can do maple creamies right there at the window. And all the maple syrup will be coming from my farm and my kid's uncle's farm in Calais. So having maple creamies right there and having an existing window that's fixed that can't open just changing that so that it can open. So the one on the right would be the order window, and the one on the left would be the pickup window. And we're developing an app through probably Chowhound, where you can order your food and drinks and pay for it through your cell phone. And that way you just come and pick it up. So if you want to order, you know, barbecue for dinner, fried chicken for lunch, but you don't have time to eat in and dine in, and the intention is just to speed up service for the community for all those people that are really busy.
Are the parking meters staying?
That would be up to you guys. I mean, we, you know, don't really have authority to.
I don't think we do either.
I did look at them and they appear just like the bike locks to, you know, it looks like they would be able to be pulled, but you know, whatever you guys tell us to do.
So currently on the side of the building, there are only 2 parking spaces?
There are 3.
3?
And the reason why we're asking for all 3, I just want to be really clear about this, because I understand that the ordinance allows for 3 more spaces for this season. Tom McCardle from Public Works told me that he would like to see the structure 15 feet off of the back of the building because of the amount of traffic that pulls into the new Onion River Outdoors and the backside for deliveries. And so what we need, we're not really able to take up all 3, but we would like to have that space for about half of the parking spot would be structure, and then space for that additional tree. And I think it's more than just safety, it's also aesthetics. Having a really balanced aesthetic when we put this in is very important. So to the eye, you're not really looking at a structure, you're looking at the greenery, you're looking at the trees, you're looking at the historic building, and your eye is drawn to the people, the activity. But I really prefer, in terms of design, to not draw attention to the actual structure, just because I think downtown Montpelier is pretty enough as it is. We don't need, you know what I mean? The idea is to look and see what's already existing there. So we just need that 3rd space, just because I also think it's a little unsafe to have one of those spaces be for parking, just because I've watched so many people out the window at the restaurant over the last 3 years try to parallel park, and not everyone is very good at it. So I think in terms of safety, it would be better not to have someone trying to parallel park right next to all the seating. But again, we're open to what you guys think. It's also very narrow. I just want to be clear about that. This drawing can sort of give you the illusion that you're getting a lot of space. Talia did a great job with it, but it's very, very narrow. So you're literally walking in to your table right away, and there's not a lot of room in there to walk around. So it's kind of like it's got to be, the space has to be sort of long and along the sidewalk in order to make it worthwhile. And we're proposing using the same beer garden style tables we have in the front, just because they're community style, and we feel like it'll encourage community, people to get to know each other and talk and, you know, make new friends and all that fun stuff.
So this rendering makes it looks as though it's built out of pallets, and then it mentions something about pallets. Is that the intention, that this is all?
No, I'll let Talia speak to that partly. And I do want to say this has to do, I think, with kind of like our tractor seats in the restaurant. We want to nod to our concept, to being down home and being America's smallest capital and agricultural center, and the idea of pallets with sweet peas growing out of them. To me, that's the planter. That's not the actual structure. And the idea is to create something that's fun and whimsical, lighthearted, and we have an alcohol license. And as long as the variance goes through and is okay, like the positive pylon, you know, people can have a beer and sit outside, and it's country without looking, you know, it's homey without looking too, you know, informal. So, but can you explain about the structure?
Yeah, so the idea of using pallets was part of the initial concept, which I thought was great. Reuse something, recycle something. It's a temporary structure. The idea is there would be a framed wall, and the pallets would be attached to that. So within that framed wall, you can see on the second page, a bit of a larger drawing, this space here is where the dark area, that's, you know, growing medium, so the sweet peas could grow up. And on either side, you're using this really abundant recycled material of the pallet as the siding for the parklet.
And it would be filled with Vermont compost from our friend Carl, Hammer Up the Hill. And the idea, you can't tell from the trees currently because like I mentioned, they're outside the structure and what we're proposing, but it would wrap around the whole exterior. So you have that. And then in terms of stakes, we would have your garden stakes but painted probably green so that they blend in like we currently do with our tomatoes. And then have some string lights that are battery operated that create a lot of nice ambiance in the evening for people sitting underneath, going from stake to stake and throughout the trees. And so just creating almost like that backyard feel of being in your backyard or at a farm in the summer where people can sit outside and it's really just charming, you know.
So I have a couple of questions. The signage looks like some sort of menu signage on the building. Is that permanently fixed or?
Thank you for asking. That is another edit. Vivian Beer, who won Ellen DeGeneres' design challenge on TV, you might know of her, is coming tomorrow to help us finish designing the signs that we're going to submit to you to look at.
So that's
We're
coming
not
independent.
we're not applying for signs today.
So my next question is this going to be lit up,
What?
the parklet?
Well, we're proposing using string lights to help light it at night, and then when we apply with the signs, we will most likely try to apply to add some very tasteful and limited lighting directed towards our signs, and hopefully that lighting can carry over. But it's pretty well lit there in the evening. It's not very dark on that corner, so hopefully we don't need a ton of lighting.
How late are you guys open?
Currently, we're open on the evenings that we are open until 9 p.m. And we are a breakfast restaurant first and foremost, so our intention is not to be a late night spot for people.
Should have good light in the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hope.
We won't necessarily
Yeah.
make it. It's more of a dusky ambiance.
And will umbrellas be part of the mix?
We've thought about it, and at this current time, we're not applying for umbrellas, and I think that has to do with the way that the space is and the length of these tables and what I'm currently looking at. I mean, if we really had to do something, we might consider it, but right now, we're not looking at that. But we're open to all suggestions, so.
One quick question, the sign that's showing here is just a sign on a blank wall. Would the sign fit into the existing frame that's there?
Right, so the sign, we're gonna come back and apply for signs later, and just so that you know what we're thinking about, because Talia just sort of added something, but it's not in the application. We're thinking of applying for a blade sign, and you can see that on the first page on the corner. There is an existing structure that comes out of the corner where a blade sign did used to hang. So we'll apply
There's
for
still the
that.
structure for
Yes,
it.
there is. And then we'll be applying for a smaller sign that hangs with the awning over the takeout window. And in terms of that sign, like for a menu, we haven't decided yet, but my hope is that we would do something that could be brought out every morning, hung, and then brought back inside, because I don't really like leaving things out on the sidewalk overnight.
Because you have a natural frame there now.
I know, isn't that cool?
Now, to the right of that, is that doorway infilled now? I can't remember.
Which one are you looking at, Steve?
The existing photos here?
Right, we have,
That's a fire escape, basically, egress door that is
Okay.
functional.
It is functional at the present.
that was the
Okay.
the door to the old basement, and we shuttered it. And so either one of those spots, they're shuttered right now, would be great for signage. But again, I lean towards something that would be hung, where we would bring it in and change what we're doing, and it wouldn't take up the whole space. It wouldn't be that
But you said
large.
that's a functional doorway?
Yeah, you have the door on the right, to the left
In
of
here.
the tall window.
Yes.
And then you have two
Oh, yeah.
windows that were closed off
Okay.
and are clapboarded over.
Yes, okay.
We do have one functional side door, and that is another thing. These windows along Langdon and that side door provide really good visibility for our staff inside, not just to make sure the area stays clean, which would be our responsibility, but also to keep an eye on that sidewalk really closely and make sure that people aren't blocking the sidewalk and it's just managed better.
One other quick question. Are these removable standards for the road area, or are you proposing? It just looks like there's a pole down into the sidewalk
Yeah.
here. But
there's
it's just a
cut sheet.
freestanding standard.
It would be brought in every night.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see that.
I like your rendering here. Are you proposing to build the pallets, or are you proposing to get them?
I think the idea was to get them.
Great question.
Recycle them.
Because then that seems difficult. I mean, what I like about this is everything lines up nicely, and that's hard to render. Like, when you go out into the world and collect pallets, they're not all gonna be constructed the same. They might be different heights, they might be different rectangular, different horizontals, and so, I think it will look very different than what is rendered here.
Right. Yeah, and we haven't determined a source for those yet, but we've been looking around, and I agree that we wouldn't want to just take any old pallet and slap it up there and have it look.
And all your horizontals will start jumping
Right,
around.
right. I think that is definitely a concern. I agree.
We would make sure that the tops of all the pallets lined up, they're all the same height.
Yeah. And is there two, like one on the inside and one on the outside?
That was
and
the
then there's-
idea, that provides,
the space for the dirt.
Very solid, the space for the dirt, right?
It would have to be
Solid edge.
lined, so obviously you're not dropping soil straight into
Right.
something that's gonna.
Right. Yeah.
The dirt would be inside of planters set inside the parklet, correct? No?
My thinking was to staple like a biodegradable material like you would use when you're laying down crops, and have that lining the inside so you can just drop the soil right in. We don't want to take up so much space that that there's no point in doing it. So that was the intention behind growing sweet peas, because there's a very, the root system they grow quickly, but there's not a big root system that needs a lot of space to grow.
It might be easier to build a pallet that allow that, like, create the space in there, and then something that I presume you want to use this in the future, not just for one season, so that it was a more sort of easily taken apart and put back together season after season versus sort of jumbo pallets that are sort of like, how does this actually go back together?
That's definitely a great thing to consider, and one of the reasons why we were excited to come to this meeting to get your ideas.
I think to speak to that, one of the reasons why our firm is incredibly busy right now, but when Mary Alice came to me with this, I couldn't say no. It sounded like such a wonderful asset to the community. I immediately, selfishly, could see myself there all the time. And then also we worked on Down Home years ago when you first applied, and when I go into the restaurant and see what Rick and Mary Alice were able to, the level of finishes that are in the restaurant, I have confidence that level of finishes is going to come through on this, and I definitely appreciate that comment about the pallets, and I think that's a great point to be looking towards. I also have confidence that I think that Rick will be able to
agree with
pull it
that.
off.
Any other questions about the window or the design, or recommendations or ideas that might help us just make sure that we're thinking about all the needs of the community? Obviously, this would be handicap accessible, and we would make sure that the spaces on the ends of the table, I measured for a table order so that wheelchairs could pull right up to the ends of these tables. And same thing with like strollers, and there's area for dogs if you want to sit with your dog. But anything else where you guys feel like you have something that you've seen in another city or an idea. I mean, there is an awning also, and just to be clear about that 1.5-story building drains really badly in the center onto the sidewalk. Like, I watched it a lot over the last few years. Not really badly, but like, if it's raining, you don't want to be standing at that window without an awning. So it's not going to be like the awning we currently have, which I kept the old frame and we just added new fabric because I was on a budget, and it just drops straight down. This awning would just go out a little bit, like the 3-penny awning, and that just is a little more space for people to stand.
But visually, the awning
It
matches
looks
the-
exactly the same as the black white stripe in front of the restaurant.
Is that permanently attached, or is that just like removable?
It would be attached similarly to the awning that we currently have in the front of the building, and I think it would be really cute. Sometimes I get sick of people saying the restaurant's cute. I'm like, really? That's all? But I do think the awning would be cute.
Retractable?
Yes, it would be retractable.
Do you have any specific color samples or the colors that you're using,
For the wood, is that what you're talking about?
either for the wood or are you going to leave it natural or stained or?
Oh, the wood itself?
We haven't decided that yet. I was really hoping to get suggestions from you guys because during our design review process, we talked about, I remember like you, Ben, specifically having some really good input. So we haven't made a decision, but I'd love to hear anything in terms of people's experience, what they've seen around town that works well, that weathers well. I don't want to do anything that's red or, looking natural and blending in is the goal, but I was hoping that we would get through this in city council and then we could, Rick, I could select something with Tolia, but
Currently, it's shown as just a natural, you're natural letting it gray naturally or doing it.
It just depends on what the material is, whether it's new palette, old palette.
Right.
species.
I think we would try to save time and not get into like staining preferably, but like we clear coat the furniture out front right now, and we do that every year before we put it out, or when we put it out, just with a boat lacquer, or actually it's that natural coatings, that's what we use.
Product usually used.
Yeah.
I guess it just depends on what you have for palettes, whether you want to leave them natural or whether you want to leave them, spray them all in color before you mount them, or.
Yeah.
So again, it just depends on how they come through, if they're coming through with writing on them or.
No, I
how
don't think
funky you want it
we
to
don't
look.
want it. No, we don't want to be funky. This is not a graffiti. We're not making a statement about.
It just looks nice with the color that you're showing here in
You
the
like that?
drawings.
Yeah, I like the
Just
way
sort
it's
of
turned out.
brownish color, maybe a little gray in it.
Right. And I'm really excited about the trees. I know so many people, all the old photographs of Langdon Street that I've pulled from the Historical Society, I mean, there are just so many trees, and there's just so few right now. So just even, just getting people thinking more about the importance of tree planting, I'm very excited about that. And I watched how many people responded to Ben's, I don't know what to call it.
Whatever you want, tree or.
It was
Tree
your
item.
sculpture, but so many people gravitated towards it and they didn't know why they were doing that. But it was amazing to watch that out my window every day, 7 days a week. So I think there's nothing more beautiful than street trees. I'm a big fan.
And one last, just quick question for my own information.
Yeah.
The existing window trim around the window there, will that be retained?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there any lighting on the side of this part of the building now?
There are a few light bulbs that are very strangely like sticking out of the trim. They're very odd. They don't function, they don't work. And other than that, the only lighting on that side of the building is on that side egress that we had to put in. We have like a can light in the ceiling that shines down, but that's all we have currently.
Okay.
established that the deck of the parklet will be the same height as the sidewalk.
Yeah. That's in the notes.
It's in the, okay, thanks.
Good.
Material?
So that's not gonna be pallets, that'll be a solid floor, so no crumbs can get down, it'll be easy, so wood,
Just a wood decking?
wood decking, yeah, tight.
Or possibly plywood. Possibly plywood. If that's acceptable.
Like an Advantech or something.
Well, I don't know, but in the cafe on the corner there of Elm Street, we put down plywood and painted it. I don't know if you've been in there, but there's a slight chance, that's one idea I had for all the things together.
And keeping it tight is a standard from the city regarding
It is.
creatures getting underneath.
It was a recommendation from Tom at Public Works, and as well, we talked also about drainage and just making sure that, you never know with the weather.
Which is also addressed.
Yeah.
So slip resistance, if you paint it, coat it, probably take it into account, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, because that's my insurance.
And it's ADA, right?
Right. Great questions. You guys have been doing this for a while.
If you're gonna do a
This is-
plywood, a marbleized kind of a finish that's not a uniform would probably look better with just the smooth surface of a plywood.
The only reason I throw out plywood is it's, it'd be a lot less expensive than cedar boards or whatever, but I don't know if we have really decided exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long, like, sheets of Advantech, 3/4 Advantech with some paint on it, whether that would make it through a summer.
Yeah.
And then just plan to put a new sheet down every season.
I'm really, it's going to be really interesting.
The other thing you can do, and they do it in Montreal frequently, is they'll use a decking material. And since you're only 7 feet from here to here, you can do that panelized, so that at the end of the season, when you have to take it up, you
Yeah.
just, the whole thing comes apart like a puzzle.
Right.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
So is there a plan to update drawings for city council based on this?
Audra didn't ask us to do that, but, I think that, she did not ask us to do that. In fact, we weren't told that we needed to be at Wednesday's meeting until Friday. So that might be the reason why they're kind of, just because this is new and they didn't have all the systems down yet for this. So I think, there's been, I'm not going to say anything other than we're very grateful to be here and we were not asked to do that. So.
I think also the concept is very similar to what's shown.
Yeah.
The changes are really that the trees are moved off further from the parklet.
Yeah, and I think city council probably trusts this committee's expertise in terms of feedback, so.
Does anybody have any suggestions as to any specific recommendations?
Just to note that the window is separate. The window is not part of the parklet application.
Right.
You're gonna be voting 2 separate
Yeah.
decisions
Yes.
on this.
This is just the
Just the
park.
park.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was clear.
I mean, I've already said this, but I think building pallets would make a more, you'd get the sort of gesture that you're looking for and keep a much sort of cleaner thing, much like you're rendering, than, and might just be easier in the long run than trying to take a whole bunch of random
Right.
pallets.
Well, Rick and I have been working together first on this, and then he worked on my home for the last couple years, which is from 1800, and did an incredible job with the historic preservation of my home. And if we ever do anything, we spend too much money on it and are too careful about the historic integrity and the type. We have a problem with that, not going the opposite direction. So.
The other advantage of building them is that you can make them lighter weight and panelized uniform. uniform panelized so that it's easier to put together, take apart, since you're putting this up and taking it down once, each
Right.
year.
Yep. Yep. Yes, definitely. Yes, I mean, I can't tell you guys how many people love the tomatoes that we've grown out front of the restaurant. Senator Leahy's wife even had him come and get tomatoes one time. And I kids and older folks, and so just having things that are edible on the sidewalk is just so much fun, because a lot of people live in town, and some people live in apartments and they just don't have garden space. So I think it's going to be fun,
And also, just in terms of the criteria, there is, compatibility of materials and appearance, I think, when you're showing this, and there's a uniformity to it, and a uniformity in color. I think that more closely addresses the criteria as far as Langdon Street being, you want to make it as classy as possible, and I think that looks really sharp.
We do. We really do. We care a lot about this building. It's on the National Register. It's going to be here a lot, far, far after I'm gone, hopefully, because of all the work we did to the structure in the basement and making sure it didn't fall into Langdon. So we're excited to celebrate it. It's a beautiful building.
Any other comments, questions? And what we'll do is we'll go through two parts. There are two criteria sheet, one for the parklet. Any more comments, questions, suggestions for the parklet itself? Okay, I'll run through the criteria. 1, preservation and reconstruction of the appropriate historic style of the proposed projects in the historic district that involves an historic structure. The parklet being separate, I would say, was not applicable to number 1. Harmony of exterior design with other properties in the district based on the drawings, and we would say that's acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping, acceptable. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities, again, the string lighting, battery-operated string lighting is acceptable. Recognition of and respect for view quarters and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and State House. I would say it's acceptable for the parklet. Any other comments or suggestions? All in favor of the parklet application, raise your hand. And we'll do this in 2 parts. Again, this is for the parklet. And I'll get you to sign above my name in the lower left corner there.
Thank you. Oh. I'm gonna borrow the pen. Thank you.
And you have the sheet for
I do.
hiding it. And then this application, the second part, is for the proposal to replace the existing window with 2 double-hung windows with restaurant takeout, awning post, roof barrier, small counter in the window. We need any more information, or do you have questions or comments regarding that? Okay, then we'll go through the criteria for that one. Preservation and reconstruction of the appropriate historic style of proposed projects in the historic district that involves an historic structure. On the structure, that's acceptable. Harmony of exterior design, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping, none on this part. On the landscaping is all with the parklet. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities, acceptable. Recognition of and respect for view corridors and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and State House, acceptable. All in favor of the application for the takeout window and associated aspects, raise your hand.
sign that one in the same spot.
Thank
There
you
you
so
go.
much.
Need a
Oh,
pen?
I'm gonna grab this one,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Are we good to go then? Anything else to discuss?
City council, this is the department's
We'll,
going to the.
we will send the recommendation up to Jamie, who is running the
Yes.
parklet process.
Right.
And the other recommendation we will get to Audra, and I think these are all just permitted uses, so I think that would just go out
So
in the next couple days.
she asked us to attend the city council meeting on Wednesday, and we'll be there. And in the meantime, we would really appreciate it if everybody would either call me, email us, or stop by the restaurant when you think of anything, related to this before we start building. Because, I know sometimes I come up with great ideas at not at the right time, but let us know your thoughts, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, and good luck with the project.
Oh, agenda, sorry. So we managed to get all the way through, except for,
Well, I knew it was gonna be too crowded or too much for an hour and a half.
it was too much for an hour and a half, but we got pretty close. So,
So do we need a table, I assume, because this is the table one.
well, I think
But
the
I hate-
DRB is waiting for them, it was waiting for your recommendation
Yeah.
as
Okay.
well, so.
Well,
I
we'll
think
run,
we need to just
we'll
run
run over then. Come
Yeah.
forward, we'll try to speed it up as much as we
Oh.
can.
I'll go check with them.
You said we did, yeah, great.
These are the same as you should have received in your packets, but I'm just bringing
Okay.
good quality colored versions in case you, just to be sure. Thank you for the time this evening. This should be a fairly simple thing. We're not re-litigating the entire proposal. It's just for the retaining walls. We were unsure, and this is still kind of a weird issue that in our working with Christ Church to get everything kind of worked out, we weren't sure in which application to illustrate some of these retaining walls. So we didn't talk about it in previous meetings because we were unclear as to whether or not that would be part of a separate application. I think in the end that the church is going to come to you with a separate application for any improvements on their land. In the meantime, we were asked by the Development Review Board to at least show how this could work. And so we're showing stuff on church land just to illustrate that this all comes together, if that makes sense to you. Before I move on, I just want to make sure everybody's acknowledges that. So the proposal before you is for retaining walls. There are 4 distinct retaining walls in this application. And I don't know why we never spoke of them before, but they are 2 at the western end of the site, one attached to the proposed hotel building, the other one attached to the original Capitol Plaza building. And then there's a retaining wall down in this corner here that is a result of the bike path project, and this retaining wall set up here that we're going to talk about for to separate the Capitol Plaza property from the Christ Church property in the short term at least. When this project gets built, we'll be raising grade in order to comply with your floodplain regulations. And so we need to do a little work to transition back to the original part, which this includes.
And when you say temporary, in the event that they build a building, they might.
Exactly.
Right,
use
and
that.
it could be there forever.
Right.
We should acknowledge that, but if everything goes well for the church, at some point, there's gonna be an apartment building here. So, we're proposing 2 different ways of doing it. On the west end of the site, where these retaining walls are attached to the major structures, we're proposing cast-in-place concrete walls. And those are illustrated for you. On the page 101.2, the wedge-shaped retaining wall you see on the top of the page relates to the east end of the hotel here. That's simply to allow us to, there's a change of grade as we ramp up to the approved building floor elevation. And this is just to help in that transition. Well, it's meant to be an exposed architectural grade concrete. And, so it's gonna take a little bit of effort to get that out of the contractor, but, it'll have to be rubbed, and if it needs to be filled, it will.
The idea is that it's a continuation of the foundation of the building, so it creates a sort of seamless experience as you walk up the hill. Particular material.
We all know what kind of concrete you normally get around here, and it's just for something like that, we'll babysit it to get a good finish quality. In the case of the L-shaped retaining wall that it's attached to the original Capitol Plaza building.
This will be the unit block system that we're using, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. And then on page 101.1, you see the retaining wall at the top of the page, which is, we don't need to do this, but because the bike path comes in, the bike path is raising grade because they're coming from over the river. And so this retaining wall is basically meant to elevate the balance of the site up to match up with the bike path between the garage and
With that wall, we've been able to create a little rest area for the bikers and a mini little pocket park there if you look at the plan. And in coordinating with Stantec and the city, everyone seems very excited about it.
And this is a block wall?
Yeah, that'll be the block wall again, yeah, the idea is unit block walls for all but the west wing wall there.
Best rendering I'm gonna see of that is in this.
I actually have the product here. We've been sort of working through pricing and coming up with it. The idea is that we would do one of the pitched phased, and then the steel mountain is the color that we've chosen so far. And this will be sort of what it looks like.
we wanted to use a modular system, especially in here, because there's the possibility that if that ever gets rearranged, we can reuse those parts, you know. You might have to, you can just lift them apart. There's nylon pins that hold them together generally.
Add to it or subtract from it to whatever they need to.
So.
Do they batter back some, or are they?
We have on the larger walls, there'll be a slight batter to them. On the smaller walls, we don't think so. So on the 6-foot wall, we think there will be a batter. Yeah, we'll have a structural, we'll have to, that would be here before we go ahead and install it.
Yeah, especially important to pay attention to this elevation looking west from the church parking lot. That's been an ongoing concern. I think it's why we're still talking to you, but it shows that there's basically a maximum exchange of grade of 2.5 feet. So we've worked hard internally on the grading of the project so that transition from the hotel property to the church has been mitigated down to a maximum of 2.5 feet. And like I said, you know, as the church's plans for their apartment project evolve and stuff, that'll be a separate application. What we wanted to do is just show what we would do today to make things right with the church as they stand. So it really, in the end, only involved about 34 yards of fill, which was about 3 truckloads, and a little bit of pavement change. None of the fill section will come anywhere near the historic structures. This has been designed to make sure that an ADA accessible route will remain from State Street to the back door of the church, and you know, I think it respects the existing accessible ramp to the back of the church hall, and it also has well away from any underground storage tanks. So it's fairly modest, this proposal, and I think will be attractive in the short term.
It's creating a far safer access to that church building that exists.
So we just that's the long and short of it. Here are the materials which, you know, we can pass around, and James and I are here to answer questions. It's over this way, so we can all see it on the record here. Okay. You want to say this?
So I want to kind of review here, looking west from the church parking lot. There's a church parking lot in here. Looking west, so this is retaining wall in here as well.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, does everybody understand the extent of the walls?
Well, it's really not
In the civil drawings, it's a little clearer. I have my rendered.
It's not highlighted that, that's where it is.
It starts,
But-
they're easier to read at 24 by 36, but I wanted everybody to have one.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's a bend in the fence right now that goes around the memorial garden. There's a big kink in that wooden stockade fence. And the retaining wall would start here at next to nothing, and then as grade comes up, So at this point,
Will that retaining wall affect any of the existing vegetation that's on the church lot now?
well, not the notable things are those big white arborvitaes, those are the big white cedars that are sort of between the fence and the Capitol Plaza. The wall starts after all of that. So we're building now in an area where existing, the parking surface comes right up to that fence, but in this proposal, we're pulling that curb line back onto our property.
Okay, so the fence remains and the wall would be on the parking lot side of the fence, up against the fence, or?
No, it'd be on our property, except for where it needs to turn.
There's
on
not
the
6
right.
There's the
feet.
existing fence, so they're gonna,
Yes.
it's currently up to the fence, so they're gonna pull it back onto their property and open up an area that's not.
So there'd be a couple of 3 feet or whatever.
Yeah, and then at the
I believe
top
it's
of the
about 5 or
wall,
6.
some prickly plants so that we don't have to put a
Railing there so we can screen the view to the parking lot a little bit. One of the other choices for the masonry wall, the unit block wall, is that it will require less of a toe footing, so we will be encroaching in that vegetation far less than if it was cast in place or other means veneered.
The civil drawings show a series of small yard drains in that interstitial space there, just to keep it from becoming a bog.
Okay.
And to prevent any water from infiltrating into the memorial garden.
So there'd be drainage in there that diverts it off to one direction or the other anyway?
It will tie into the stormwater system that's being built as part of the project.
Okay.
We have a fairly large catch basin right here where all these roads come together, and it'll just drain into that catch basin, which has plenty of invert.
So which? It's the pitched face series, and it's the gray one. I can't remember the name.
It's called Steel Mountain.
Steel Mountain, yeah.
This was selected in part because Public Works reached out to us. We've been coordinating with Stantec on, James has been coordinating with them on the bike path part of it, and that's what they've already spec'd for the retaining wall that's gonna be happening on the city's part of that project. It's a unit block wall, yeah, we're working with them to get that coordinated. But it's the same look, it's the same look.
So it's fairly resistant to snow removal?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an autoclaved cast concrete product. It'll take
10,000 PSI, it's very, very strong.
Has the church given any feedback on any of the proposed retaining walls?
We continue to dialogue with the church. We their team and the Capitol Plaza's legal team are working out an MOU now. Mostly the sticking points are around shared costs and some other things, but no, there's been a very vigorous ongoing conversation between ourselves and the church. And
No, I just was wondering if you've gotten any serious pushback from them about any of the proposed retaining walls elevation.
no, I
Because
think
obviously
they
there's a lot
hired
of negotiation.
They hired Engineering Venture to conduct an independent review of the proposed changes. We modified the work to address the concerns raised by EV, and so, like I said, I think ultimately the church will be coming in with some kind of application for the portions of this that need to happen on their land, the drainage and some things like that. But hopefully that'll be a fairly minor affair. No, I think at this point we're down to crossing i's and dotting t's with them on an MOU.
comments, questions, suggestions from anyone about the proposed retaining walls? Okay, we'll run through the criteria for this. Preservation or reconstruction of the appropriate historic style of the proposed projects in the historic district involves an historic structure, acceptable. Harmony of exterior design with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping with the district, acceptable. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, building, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities, no additional lighting proposed other than what was with the original.
No other changes other than these walls.
Okay. No additional utilities proposed. Recognition of and respect for view porters and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and state house, acceptable. All in favor of the application as proposed, raise your hand. I'll get you to sign that.
Again, I'm
on
gonna
the
get
lower
Mr.
left.
I'm gonna get Mr. Bashar to sign that, but I will.
Okay. Okay, sure. I'll check on all that as well.
I need that back for more minutes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And quickly to move on, we'll have to postpone the minutes, approval of the minutes, because there are only two of us here that are on the list.
Okay.
Eric and Ted and Liz are not here. And any other business? Anything to end up? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor of adjournment, raise your hand. Meeting is adjourned. the City of Montpelier Development Review Board meeting for this Monday, May 7th, 2018. We're starting a little bit late this evening because of scheduling difficulties with the prior board hearing. However, I'm calling the meeting to order now. My name is Dan Richardson. I am the Vice Chair and Acting Chair this evening. And the other members of the DRB from my right are
Jack Lindley, James Lamonda,
Sarah McShane, staff.
Roger Kranz.
Kate McCarthy.
Okay, and the 5 members that you see here are the 5 voting members for this evening. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. So motion by Jack, second by James. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Have an agenda. No comments from the chair this evening, other than to note, my understanding is that the sole application before us, which is the Capitol Plaza project, has now fully passed out of the DRC.
That's correct.
And that we have the full application before us for the first time in this project's history. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by that last comment.
I just mean that we have, there's nothing further that we'll be waiting on. We
yes.
can complete our review tonight.
That's correct.
If we have the proper evidence and that we're ready to, there's nothing further outstanding.
That's correct.
Simply all I meant. The approval of the minutes from April 16th. Those present were myself, Jack, Roger, and Kate, so we have a quorum.
Move they be accepted as printed.
Motion by Jack.
Second.
Second by Kate. All those in favor, please raise your right hand that are eligible to vote, and the minutes are approved. All right. So, first order of business is 100 State Street. Why don't you, well, you were sworn in last meeting, is that correct?
I was, yeah.
Okay. Well,
we can swear.
why don't we do this all over again, and then I'll have you introduce yourselves. Anyone who thinks they may be testifying this evening, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony they're about to give for the matter under consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I will.
Okay. So, if you'll just introduce yourself for the record, and I think probably the best way to start is to have you give us a recap of what's new.
Okay, thank you. My name's Greg Rabideau from Rabideau Architects. I'm joined here at the table with Fred Bashar of the Capitol Plaza Corporation, and in the on-deck circle tonight is James Finley-Shiris from Wagner Hodgson, our landscape architect, and Ron Lyon from DuBois & King, our project civil engineer. When we last met with this board, we were mostly through the approval of the project when it came to light that we needed to come back in the matter of retaining walls. So this evening's presentation is all about retaining walls, so far as I know. The conditional use and other aspects of the application were dealt with at the prior hearing. What is new in this evening is in this package that I handed out. Should mirror the same package that you got with your from the staff, but we have identified 4 retaining walls that needed approval by the Design Advisory Committee. And as you noted earlier, they took action just moments ago, so that has happened. The 4 retaining walls, there are 2 on the west end of the site, one attached to the end of the Hampton Inn building, and a second that is sort of enveloping the workyard dumpster area attached to the Capitol Plaza building. And there are 2 retaining walls shown on the eastern end of the site. One that's been of particular public interest, which is creates the transition from the project site to the Christ Church Episcopal, and a second retaining wall down in this corner, which actually happens to be the tallest of the retaining walls, and that is predicated by the installation of the bike path, which the deck elevation on the bridge kind of sets the geometry for that whole bike path across the Haney lot, through the Capitol Plaza property, over the train tracks, and to the Taylor Street project. The retaining walls are illustrated on the next 2 sheets, which are labeled L101.1 and L101.2. And starting at the top of 101.1, you can see that the retaining wall on the top of the page is the one that relates to the bike path location. We could build the garage without it, but we raised that elevation up to the bike path so that we could create that little pocket park that sits in the back of the garage that we spoke of previously. And this will integrate with a retaining wall being proposed as part of the bike path project, and we have coordinated with Stantec on the geometries of those, and we have also coordinated with Stantec and the city on the proposed material. It's a rock-faced concrete product. Three of the retaining walls are modular, they're systems-built ones. This one on the Haney lot is one of those that's built out of individual units. The other two are the one adjacent to the church, and then there's one adjacent to the workyard that I talked about. The only cast-in-place concrete wall, I was corrected earlier, the only cast-in-place wall is the one attached to the Hampton Inn. Also on that page L101, you see down at the bottom the elevation looking west from church parking lot. That's been an important part of our dialogue with the church, and I think the important things to point out there is that we've worked on the grading around the entrance to the garage and everything to allow this wall to be 2.5 feet tall at its tallest. And that's a big improvement, I think, over what we were talking about last time. So it's knee height now instead of being more substantial, and I think that's a big improvement. The retaining walls that show on page L101.2 are the one on the west end of the hotel that I mentioned is attached to the hotel building. That's simply there to facilitate the rising grade from Taylor Street up to the front entrance of the hotel, which is super elevated because of the floodplain regs. And then the last one that shows here on the bottom of L101.2 is the retaining wall that sort of wraps around where we're planning on putting the dumpsters, and there's a few parking lots, but it's doing a couple of things for us there. James, you had cut sheets of those materials? Yeah, just pass those out or pass them around.
And will that steel mountain facade be the same for all the retaining walls?
That's it, except for the cast-in-place wall to the west of the building, the hotel itself.
And just so I understand fully, when you say cast in place, that's just essentially the cement wall will have the facing on it?
It'll be poured at the same time we pour the building foundation, and it'll have, a smooth concrete face. You'll see the form tie knockouts, and we'll rub it down and fill any voids and make sure it's uniform in color, but it's a cast concrete wall.
And Sarah, the DRC approved these retaining walls?
Yeah, Mike can probably give an overview. I didn't attend the DRC meeting prior to this, but
Hey, Mike? Yep. Yeah. Hey, Mike? Do you have the DRC approval for this, or? Okay, great.
I know we signed it, so.
While they're going through that, did the board have any questions about these retaining walls?
I guess I do have a question that's mostly out of curiosity. On the east retaining wall that you said will align with the bike path retaining wall,
Yes.
is the bike path retaining wall going to be here on this upper
Yes.
edge of the bike path? Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll be kind of create. Okay.
Those plans, as well as plans for any improvement on the church property, will be subject to separate applications,
Right, right.
logically. So,
But those have been sort of, there's been discussion about making them look the same, I think is what you said.
oh, yeah, yeah.
All that to match the modern
Great. Thanks.
And with the exception of the dumpster retaining wall, all of the other retaining walls sit sort of at the edge of the property facing out.
They do, yeah. The bike path retaining wall would face the Haney parking lot. The only visible portion of the retaining wall adjacent to the church would be visible from the church parking lot side of things. You'll see James has planted a series of shrubs along the top of that so that there's no need for a handrail or...
Keep people from hanging out at the edge of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the big improvement in this plan since we saw you last was the manipulation of those grades to get that grade exchange down to the minimum, the 2.5 feet.
Great. And, sorry, Mike, go ahead. Did you have the DRC approval?
Yeah, I had
mean, is
the-
it conditioned or in any way?
It
or-
was not conditioned in any way. The only notes were that there were no additional utilities proposed in this. I think just the general comments were just the reflection, there was the reflection of the fact that Tom McCardle had asked that the materials match the bike path, and the applicant had proposed to do that, in particular along the Heaney lot. And then there was some discussion about the poured in place. That was probably one that was talked about more, just to make sure that had the appropriate finish on it, due to its location and the fact that it's the only one that's not matching the block that was proposed in the application.
Although, I mean, its location there at the back of the hotel puts it in a slightly different visual field than it's not as if it's going to be next to.
You'll see it as you drive in from Taylor Street.
Oh,
It's-
no, this is the point. I mean, you'll see it. You'll
Yeah.
see. Okay, so but I guess my point was, and I'll turn this into a question. Does it sit adjacent to any of the other retaining walls?
No. They wouldn't be a side-by-side comparison if that's what you're leading up to.
Right, that's where I'm headed with that. Because I think that might be more of a concern, at least in visual sense.
No, it'll be tied into the building, and we'll make it look as such. For us, it's a prominent entry corridor into the hotel, so we're going to want that to look pretty nice. And this application doesn't have anything to say about signs, but that might not be a bad place for a sign.
Sure.
Depending on how your regs read. As to the utility comment, I do want to note, just to put some people at ease, we weren't proposing any additional lighting or anything as part of this, but as prior testimony we've talked about, we have made provision for utility connections for the future project next door in our utility planning. That's not a change or anything, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Right, I understood the DRC just simply to say that as their specific sort of sphere of review, that they weren't adding any additional utilities. It was in a very limited review of the retaining walls.
I think we all understand each other, I just know that there are representatives of the church here, and I just wanted to set them at ease, so.
So given that that's probably the primary thing we're going to be talking about, was there anyone in the audience that wished to comment on the retaining walls or any of the issues associated with them? If you can come up to the microphone and just introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Nate Stearns. I'm an attorney representing the church. And just want to say that we appreciate how much Capital Plaza has worked with us over the course of the last month to address all the church's concerns. And the plans that you can see in front of you tonight have on them essentially what we've worked out with Capital Plaza to address the impacts on the church property. Capital Plaza's been great about representing to us that they want to make sure that there's no impacts to the status quo on the church property, and in light of that and the plans that are here, the church has no objection. We'd like to see the project go forward.
Any other comments? Okay. oh, sorry, okay. Any other comments from the board? I mean, I don't wanna go too slowly or too fast through this. There were a couple questions, that Tom McCardle raised in email.
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review that?
He had a long list of comments that I think the only one germane to tonight's hearing was that he wanted us to coordinate the material choices between ourselves and the bike path project. It's been my understanding as we go along that the details of the utility connections that Tom mentions in his memo were not a prerequisite for board approval. I think it's our understanding that Public Works will have another bite at this apple when we get to 100% CDs. And so, like his comment about the final detailing of the connection of the water line at the street is probably a conversation that will, continue as we go through construction documentation.
Right, and, well, I mean, one of his points is that the design now indicates retaining wall will be constructed above both the existing and proposed mains, will require additional design considerations, or staff will provide a sketch of the desired interconnection and alignment of a stub for future extension. So, I mean, I understand that that's not really in our purview, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. Obviously, going forward,
right,
that's something you're going to have to interact with the Department of Public Works for that. But the one above that about the drainage, that was certainly a concern.
I'm gonna invite my civil engineer up to try to put you at ease on that a little bit, because he's had a more or less running dialogue with Tom on this stuff.
Yes, we had talked to Tom a couple times and walked through some of the details, especially the coordination of the retaining walls and the drainage and the water mains. And I think that most of Tom's comments, or all of Tom's comments, tend to be related to the moving forward on detailed design, and the project must be coordinated with the retaining wall with Stantec, for example. I think there was a question on, as we go forward, if the bike path, shared use path goes before the hotel goes, there may be some requirements to coordinate on how do you support that bike path with some kind of a temporary wall, a temporary fill situation, to be sure a bike path could go forward as opposed to being held up by the hotel project. And so that was just something, his concern. He says that's the type of thing. He says we've got Taylor Street going forward, we've got the transit center going forward, we've got the bike path going forward, and the hotel going forward, all in this small area. And it's, the comment really was just that this is in everyone's mutual benefit to be sure they all fit together. So we talked about drainage quite a bit. He was pleased with what we've done with drainage for the church, back area of the church. There may be some minor adjustments to that as we go into detailed design and review it with the city. And there may be some adjustments to the water main because they don't really understand quite where that water main is going on the church property yet. So that's quite honestly very normal at this stage. Things will shift a few feet here and there with the water main and work with DPW. So there's nothing, I don't think there's any real serious concerns about working with the city DPW on that. I think the other things that he mentioned was, came up in the last conversation, was Green Mountain Power utility pole at Taylor Street. And looking at the solution on that, which they were looking at some kind of a push pole, but I don't think that's something that's been totally resolved as such, but is something that will be coordinated with DPW and Green Mountain Power.
That's a Green Mountain Power project, by the way. It's predicated by the
Yes.
Taylor Street project, and it really isn't really an integral part of the hotel application other than it happens to sit on the hotel property. So it's...
No, I understand that. I think, at least my specific question really came from his first point about the drainage, that there's the 3 additional lawn drains that are on the church property.
Yes.
And invited DRB scrutiny, and I think that's proper for, how that was being managed as far as future maintenance, ownership. I presume that will remain church property, is there going to be an easement or some type of relationship as to future as far as that drainage system, who will maintain it?
I think that is important to have an agreement, because it's going to be on church property. We talked to Paul Boisler from Engineering Ventures and on the placement and the number of these and how it would work best for the church property and the memorial garden. We did talk about just, yes, it's something if you put a utility, anything on someone else's property, it would be something you work out, much to the same as on the water main extension through the church property and through the Capitol Plaza property. And so that was kind of limited, the discussion was limited to say, yes, we understand that that's a requirement. It's in the memorandum of the church to have that. And it has to be a memorandum to have a discharge point.
But that's why I wanted to make sure that so it sounds as if there's a conversation going on with the church that's going to, as part maybe a larger memorandum with maybe Mr. Stearns and,
We have a lot of shared interactions to get these two projects built, and so, yeah, there is a memorandum of understanding that's being formed between the parties. The extension of the water line through our property and then across church property is a public works project to replace an aging loop. So this water line that crosses church property is there to charge or provide a backup charge to the water lines on Main Street. And so it's not really of specific benefit to this project. It is part of our global coordination of utilities through this corridor. And those yard drains were there principally to just keep water from ponding on the Memorial Garden, which, you know, is a delicate area and needs to be preserved. So I guess our expectation is that those facilities that are constructed on the church property will belong to the church. If there's a need for cross easements to connect to the mains, then we can make that happen.
And those were cited based on the survey that the church did, the topographical survey to show that we can get drainage in that area. I think the church or their engineer is very comfortable that these drains will provide that drainage.
well, you know, part of our job is not to sort out the easement relationships.
We're not asking you to.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but just to make clear for everyone that I think it's our understanding. We just wanted to raise it. I wanted to raise it simply so that, and I think the testimony that you gave is sufficient, which is that you've started to talk with the church. There's a memorandum of understanding that's being formed and coming together for these rights. And I think that's what Tom McCardle's main point is that, you know, if part of your drainage system lies on another property, you're going to need, you know, rights to maintain that, those drainage systems, both in the installation and then going forward. And so it sounds like this is part of a larger universal agreement that you're coming together where
That's correct.
you're letting water mains go through your property. For them, they're letting certain easements. I mean, it sounds as part of this larger construction, who knows, and if that won't shift a little bit over time either.
Yeah, the community-based utilities are definitely something we'll have to work out with all parties involved. The utility extensions we're talking about on a church property are for the benefit of the church. That should be understood. The yard drains and the parking lot drainage, and a water line extension. Those were things done on behalf of the church to make their side of this work.
Note that the chair, Phil Salinger, has arrived. He added to the roll, but if you're gonna let me.
No, please continue.
Okay. So I think at this point, is there any questions from the board? Yes, Kate.
I have a general question, not related to the walls, but that I think it comes up now because we're talking about the sort of the big plan, the universal coordination, and I have a question about how that works. The first thing I'll say is that it's really clear that everyone's working very hard to communicate with adjacent parties, with other projects, with the city, and that's just always really excellent to hear. So thank you. I know that will continue. I'm still very curious, though, and perhaps also for our listeners at home, to know who who's air traffic control on this? Who is the one person that says, okay, you get to start digging today, you need to wait until tomorrow to dig, fill happens this way, retaining wall goes in now? Is there someone who's the puppet master here? Or is it maybe that's not the right term. Air traffic control.
You're talking, are you expanding your scope to consider Taylor Street as well?
I'm thinking of the numerous projects that are taking place, and I wonder, again, just for the interest of the public, is it whoever gets their permit first can start digging and everyone else coordinates accordingly, or?
Well, I don't think it's quite going to work like that. One thing we did in assembling our team, or which Capital Plaza did in assembling our team, was to make sure that there was some continuity between the team members.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the same landscape architect and the same civil engineer for our project as well as Taylor Street. That was a big consideration in our determination of who to pick. Right now, we've been talking to the same general contractor to do both projects.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that will continue in that direction. So I think I don't think there's one person who can claim to be king of the hill. I think the same level of coordination that's gone between ourselves and the church to get to this point with them
Mm-hmm.
will happen to a lesser degree with Taylor Street, which is adjacent but not abutting, and the bike path project, which I think has the potential to be a real coordination issue.
So it's mostly between the private parties, is what I'm hearing you say, as opposed to someone standing on top of the hill saying, go, go, go.
As project architect, I'll coordinate the efforts of our team, and we've had direct and very constructive dialogue with the architects from Taylor Street and from Stantec, who's handling the bike path part of it.
I also had to address the city's part of this. Tom McCardle said we're going to have very close coordination with the city project manager for the city. Corey Line has been assigned to look at all those pieces, and he's already doing that now on several projects in that area.
That might have been the point person answer that I was anticipating.
It's really nice, because it really is. You've got that go-to person to say our project and their project are coming together in these pieces at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Okay. Like I said, I've heard that the coordination between parties is very good, very positive, the way you've explained it, Greg. But I was sort of wondering if there was that one person at the city who was
it's going to be tough.
taking the big view. Yeah. Yeah.
There could be some real benefits, though, because certain
yeah.
subcontractors mobilize to the site, and if they're stripping concrete forms off of one project and moving next door with them, yeah, I think that's the hope on the contracting team side of things.
Yep.
It'll really come down to, for us, we anticipate a November start, depending on the tax increment financing portion of this. And one of the reasons why we needed to get wrapped up and why we've been pushing to conclude this part of it is we think we're going to need all of that 4 or 5 months to get this nailed down.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for answering that question, particularly since it doesn't pertain to the walls we're looking at, but I think it's an important overall thing for folks to understand.
It's gotta work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, just looking over the last few points. I think there's just a few small items of business that we need to address. One is the snow storage. Apparently there was a bit of a typo in some of the earlier ones, putting snow storage in different locations, and I just wanted to confirm my understanding looking at the drawings now is the temporary snow storage location is to the west of the proposed hotel.
Yes. It was determined at the earlier hearings that we had more parking than is required by your zoning ordinance. Although we want to need all that parking, I think it was determined that we could take some of those out of service so long as we were staying within compliance with your regs. So yeah, and it's the practice now, and it will continue to be the practice that snow will be removed from the site at the earliest convenience. And they're off-siting it now to the snow depot on the bridge over by
The city does it now.
That would be the plan continuing.
The city works on this, yes.
And then the other comment that the staff had raised, and this may, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review some of the staff comments for tonight's meeting, was about the loading and siting of parking and loading spaces. And these are under the old zoning bylaws, in particular sections 706 and 707. But it talks about the regulations requiring for buildings containing hotels, one off-street loading space for every 10,000 square feet of gross floor area. And by our calculations, that would be about 5. And my understanding is there's really only one off-space loading, and so you haven't necessarily requested a waiver, but one might be implied from this.
If it's not too late, I would ask you to consider that. I think a loading space for every 10,000 square feet of hotel is probably excessive in my view, because this is not a full-service hotel in the sense that it doesn't have a restaurant, which would be a big generator of waste, or any significant other spaces that would require a lot of delivery of materials. Right now what happens is trucks come in behind the parking lot, and they park essentially adjacent to where we're showing our trash and recycling, and they just unload there. We've made sure that they can pull in and turn and get back out, but we just don't have the real estate to create a huge loading dock area, and it seems to be working now. I mean, the real heavy traffic is servicing the restaurant, to be honest, and the banquet facility in the existing hotel. But I don't anticipate a lot of new demand being sprung from this Hampton Inn. So if there were a way to ask for that waiver, I would ask for it.
Board have any questions? So, just so I understand, your expectation is that the new inn is not going to require the same type of loading as say, the Capitol Plaza, but what type of weekly loads are you anticipating? I mean, you're expecting. I mean, obviously there are some food and beverages that are going to be sold
provide
there.
a minimum self-service breakfast,
right?
Which is cereals and you pour your own waffles and juice. That's about it, and it's standardized throughout the whole. We're told by Hampton exactly what we have to have, where it's supposed to be, who does it, and everything else. So.
But I mean, is that delivered then on a weekly basis?
Depending on usage. If it's not, you store it in your refrigerators and your storage pantries, wherever you need it.
Yeah, I mean, if you had the architectural drawings that were submitted with the application, you can see that the amount of food preparation area in here is a room that's about 11 feet wide and about 14 feet long. Most of you probably have bigger kitchens in your homes, and yeah, you're going to have hot eggs, bagels, fresh fruit, yogurts, that kind of stuff. Generally, I mean, we've worked with a lot of hoteliers. Generally, that kind of stuff is getting picked up at Costco. You're not going to see the big Shadowcross Farms or the Provenders, Black River Produce, or any of those. They're coming to the site. They're going next door to the Capitol Plaza. Yeah, other than that, I mean, the big event for loading here will be when the furniture shows up, and that'll be part of construction operations. Obviously not a permanent situation.
And then, like cleaning supplies and the normal other items that go into the running of the hotel, that's not a, I'm just trying to understand.
It's not a tractor trailer.
It's not a tractor
small
trailer.
box truck. We get it at the theaters, we get it at all our locations. They drop it off and run in.
Would the plan for that box truck be to park in that loading zone, or would it be to park in front of the
So
the
small,
entrance?
they can park anywhere, really.
Right. Well, I'm just so I understand, because part of what we have to do, and I think the board, I haven't heard any statement to the contrary that we're willing to entertain the idea of waiver, but I think it's helpful for us to understand what we're waiving. And so if there's a box truck coming with these supplies, would it be reasonable for us to say that they would park under the awning in the entrance unload these type of materials, or would there be another location that
We probably, I mean, just as a sort of social thing, wouldn't want them going through the lobby with that stuff. Generally speaking, we kind of want them to go to the east end door, or the west end door, and come in that way, because that's where the food prep and food storage stuff is. And, a lot of the employee-based storage type areas. Laundry for this hotel will be done next door at the Capitol Plaza, so there'll be some cart traffic going back and forth. But yeah, I mean, when we came up with that little work yard, I mean, that was intended to sort of do a lot of things, you know, get a lot of the stuff, the dumpsters and the bread racks and stuff out of sight and in a controlled, contained area. So.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, I was going to just confirm, you said all the there won't be any laundry deliveries? The laundry is all going to be done elsewhere on the site?
It's going to be done in the Capitol Plaza.
Linens and towels and
Yes.
things? So that wouldn't be a loading or unloading facility?
No, that's going to be a houseman with a cart going back and forth between the two buildings, I think, or, you know.
Tough road in January.
Well, it is.
I thought about a tunnel underneath.
Another variance.
No, it makes sense to have that equipment busy all the time and to not have two sets of it if you can avoid it.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. So I think, in just reviewing the packet, I think we've covered all the additional items, understanding that this is the end of a very long process. Do any of the board members have any either overarching questions or issues that have previously received testimony on you wish to elicit further?
Two questions.
Yes.
Greg, I was wondering if you could provide just a brief overview. So the plans were, I reviewed the plans last week prior to Thursday, and I was just wondering if you could provide a brief overview of the revisions made to the plans that were submitted on Thursday. And then just for clarification, what improvements are you guys seeking approval for that are off-site?
Okay. I think there were some spot elevations and a few minor changes to the retaining walls adjacent to the church that came up. Monday, we got staff comments from Tom, and so we took some of Tom's thinking into account as well. And so the changes between Monday and Thursday were not substantial, but it was really just, I think at one point, if you look at the planting bed around there's this sort of planting bed, that at one point had a wall that was 2 feet high all around. We've let that just turn into a curb now. As far as off-site improvements go, I don't know that the board can approve off-site improvements. It's our understanding that what will have to happen ultimately is that Christ Church Episcopal will come in with an application for some of these little detaily things on their property, which will there may be things that Capitol Plaza is donating or constructing for them, but our understanding is that they need to have a separate permit for improvements on their land. We've illustrated this in a way that shows you it all comes together, but I think the permit for us will stop at the property line. That said, there are some site utilities that are definitely part of this project that do go off-site, the most notable of which is our storm drainage facility, which will more or less parallel the bike path and discharge to the north branch of the Winooski River through the head wall of the bike path bridge. So that's an off-site utility that's illustrated in the civil engineering plans that we would want approved, and expect that Public Works has reviewed that and understand it and think it's okay. And then, of course, you know, we'll have some utility improvements in State Street, which will be part of the project, not strictly on our property boundary.
I think most of the drainage of the bike path is part of the bike path project by the city already. So I believe that's all approved. as far as
You know, the city does own that bike path area, we don't.
Right. I think Sarah's question, this would be, but where
No, I just want to make sure I fully understand what the permit covers.
That's my understanding of the law. That's been our position right along. We've gone beyond that and illustrated what we think is a workable solution for the church so that we can put the church at ease and we can put you at ease that when they come in with their application, these two things can't work together. So we've essentially provided them a curb cut and a curb stop for water and a plug-in for stormwater at the property boundary. There will be improvements on church land, and whether it's us or Engineering Ventures or somebody who comes forward and completes that for them, they still have some thinking about how they really want this to be finished on their end. And we don't want to get in the way of that process. You know, they have another project coming and they're thinking about that at the same time. But we've done this in a way that it's shown that it works and the impacts on the church are minimal. And if we have to help them get over that, we will. But I don't see a way for you to approve these improvements on another piece, on a private property owner's land without them making an application.
Well, and I just want to understand, are there any of these, I understand the improvements that, why you're trying to show that the Episcopal Church will be able to do what they can do. And obviously that's been an important part of your negotiations with them. I think part of what Sarah's question is going towards, and I'd like to know, are there any improvements apart from utilities, such as power lines or issues that you're relying upon for the way in which your project's going to function that may be located off-site? You know, we were talking earlier about these storm drains. It's different if the storm drains are part of how the church is going to develop its property and ensure that it meets its obligations. It's different if these storm drains have been installed or being sought so you can meet your storm drain obligations.
They're not. No, let me make that emphatically clear. The issue is that we have a stormwater regulation that says your first floor has to be at 527. As we build up this fill section to meet that requirement, we're sort of essentially damming off the southwest corner of the church's property so that their existing parking and their memorial garden, there's an expressed concern that water could impound there, and so we're providing a method for it to get off of their property. But the stormwater is generated on church property, and the facilities are there to deal with that. So, yeah, there are improvements that we will provide as part of our agreement with them or whatever. But you know, I could take that retaining wall and run it straight from State Street back to the garage and not impact the church at all with a driveway or anything. It's just that we've had this agreement, this working arrangement to maintain access to the church in the way that we've illustrated. So, does that make it any better for you?
It does, and it's you know, it's in part what you're describing is because you're altering the way in which water either flows or comes off of land. I think this is an issue that sounds like something that you're arranging, working out with the church to avoid any private transaction they might have as to changing the way water flows between these two properties.
Yes. But ultimately, once that's all done and those utility improvements are made, they'll be church property, and the church will maintain them as they maintain the rest of their property.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that whatever changes may be made to the church's property aren't necessarily improvements as much as they are reactions to mitigate the impact of what your development is going to do on your property?
I think that's a fair characterization, yeah.
That's number one. Number two, do you have a license from the church to enter onto its property to take these mitigating steps?
It's not fully consummated, but we are working towards that goal. And I expect a part of that will be that they'll come in with an application under their authorship, you know, signed by them, saying, we're making these improvements on church property if it's in some part in reaction to us, so be it, but there'll be another step in this process for them, I think.
The actual response to my question about whether there's a license is really if they want the mitigating steps to be taken, they should give you permission to enter.
Yeah, and I, maybe Nate can speak to that, but I mean, we're coordinating on, last time I looked at the list, there was probably 20 bullet points, so.
Any further questions from the board? Sir, do you have anything else? How does the board wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll recommend that we close the hearing and that we go into deliberative session for this particular file.
Okay. Motion by Jack.
Second.
Second by Roger. Any further discussion? Anything further?
Would deliberative session be after this session, or are you gonna do it at a
Yes.
date in the future?
No, we'll do it, we'll probably start after this session, and then usually what happens when we do a deliberative session is we end up issuing a written permit that, and especially given the scope and size of this project, is going to have a number of different findings written out.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to thank Sarah McShane for sticking in past her employment date to help us get through this. We've enjoyed our working relationship with city staff. I think it's been really good, and just wanted to make note of that because Sarah has moved on to Stowe. But I thank you all for your time and your patience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks to other participants as well.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of taking the closed direction going into executive session, please raise your right hand. And going to move into deliberative session. We've closed the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Appreciate it. Well, let's just take care of the other business and then we'll go into executive session. Okay, sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone, just if you can be a little quiet, we have to finish our nominal amount of business before we move into deliberative session. This is a note, other business. Looks as if the 4 Spring Street has been withdrawn by the applicant. And then the 213 Main Street sketch plan was tabled by the applicant. Do we need to make a motion to table it?
Yeah, to continue it to a
Continue it.
time.
Okay. So 213 Main Street is asked to be tabled to our May 21st meeting.
I make a motion to table the 213 Main Street application until May 21st.
Friendly amendment, you mean continue?
Yeah, continue.
Okay. Motion by Roger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by James. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it is continued. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is for Monday, May 21st, 2018. And James, is this your last meeting?
With the hotel, look like it's being done, yes. I think this will be the last application I'm going to be a part of.
Well, I personally, and I'm sure the board as well, thank you very much for the years of service. And,
I'm sure I'll see everybody around. I'm just doing different things.
Exactly.
How many years of service do we give you credit for, James?
Oh, I don't keep that close to track. 6 or 7, something like that.
Bigger than a bread box.
Yeah, we've been in Montpelier 9, so it's been most of that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll take a...
If I could just make one comment about our chairman, who deserves an incredible thank you for the people of Montpelier for shepherding what I consider to be a massive revitalization of downtown. And without Phil in the chair and being here, we could have never gotten it done. And I just applaud his efforts, and I think the people of Montpelier, when you see him on the street, thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
So
Thanks, Jack.
we'll take a...
They just try to run me over.
We'll take a motion
Now they should know better.
to adjourn and move into deliberative session.
So moved.
Motion by James. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Jack. All those in favor of adjourning and moving into deliberative session, please raise your right hand. We are adjourned.
Unanimous.